Hello students, welcome to EPG Padasala. This module is all about changing trends in crime prevention approaches around the world. It's a model number 37, learning outcomes to make the learners understand the key concept in crime prevention, to acquaint the learners with important crime prevention trends and models used across the world, to enrich the learners with changing trends in crime prevention approaches. To start with, this module has contemporary changing trends in crime prevention approaches. The concept of crime prevention approaches are changing according to the needs of the end user. This write-up records overview of the changes in crime prevention approaches from punitive to corrective and then to protective, which have mandated a shift in responsibility from individual to community and vice versa. Crime prevention in its simplest definition is the process of deterring crime, criminal and reducing levels of victimization. Crime is dynamic, hence the prevention approach will change accordingly. White and Perron view crime prevention as the creation and implementation of proactive programs and strategies which are designed to prevent crime and address the fear of crime. Another comprehensive definition is advanced by Van Dyck and Dewar to treat crime prevention as the total of all private initiatives and state policies aimed at reduction of damage caused by an act defined as crime and criminality by the state. Common idea of this definition is crime prevention is not the sole responsibility of law enforcement and police, but rather a collective obligation of different sectors in society, communities and in government. It can otherwise be called as collective effort for a collective efficacy in developing strategies that prevent crime occurrence and provide safer living space. Each crime prevention approach will have its agenda. However, any approach will come under the three of the following type of crime prevention. 1. Punitive, 2. Corrective and 3. Protective. Punitive approach is a traditional approach known to public. It was successful until urbanization, industrialization and globalization. With advent at modern transport and communication system, this approach lacks effectiveness and results are not fair. This model is processed and executed by criminal justice functionaries through deployment and or development of criminal laws, law enforcement, crime stoppers, courts, jails and prisons. Corrective approach. This approach facilitates and attends to the citizen requirement, especially the risk population of whom crime remains inevitable in a society. They believed supporting troubled citizen with their requirement can put an end to issue of crime. Hence, they concentrated on creating employment, providing good environment, enhanced skill, counseling for the troubled, mentoring youth and people at risk, reduction of drug addiction, education tailoring to the local needs and conditions, continued testing and improvement in implementation. Protective approach. This approach uses citizen participation, government and private agencies. They work on neighborhood watch, community policing, public education, dissemination of inspirational information and sector. The town planning authorities, police, private security, most of the crime prevention approaches used in contemporary world are protective in nature, except these approaches that are used by police and criminal justice agencies, which are called punitive. The most important trend models are given in the following one versus contemporary crime prevention approaches are social crime prevention. The essence of the social crime prevention approach aim to prevent offending by changing not the physical environment but the social environment, which is corrective in nature. It intends to create a social condition that will deter potential or actual offender from committing crime. Hence, the strategy associated with social crime prevention includes empowering community with the knowledge, resource and program that creates a diversion from criminal behavior towards loyalty. This is called an intervention model of social prevention that limits the focus of the children and youth programs, which concentrates on skills building, leisure programs, sport meets, youth drop-in centers, employment programs, health of the individual and other activity that increases productivity behavior of the children and youth. Most of the community-based and community development strategies of crime prevention have been modeled after the social prevention concept. Example of successful social crime prevention strategies include so-called Head Start project pioneered in the United States since the 1960s. These programs focused on social justice as a crime deterrent by empowering poor and disadvantaged families with education and other enrichment program. One of the most prominent social prevention strategy implemented was the Bonimaison's program of Epinay, France, named after town's mayor Monsieur Gilbert Bonimaison, MP. This program was implemented in France during a period of social instability that was characterized by high level of unemployment, ethics, rioting and violence. The French government collaborated with the local government to develop a diversionary program for the youth and made it a national priority. Some of these crime prevention programs inspired by Bonimaison strategy includes education of young people, retraining of those who fail to cope up in education system, better housing, employment, adequate health service, aid to victims of crime, better condition for immigrants and ethnic groups, drug use treatment, after school activities for young, prevention of youth culture, training and recreation center in each council areas. The developmental crime prevention model is another model that as a concept strives to link childhood development with later delinquency is proved by several criminological theories. Researchers that has conducted prevention experiments were able to establish that the factors surrounding early childhood are significant precursor to a delinquent behavior. This model hasn't reached Asian continent basically for two reasons. One, Asia has a good number of closed society where children and most respected parents are more courageous, give up life for protection of the children. The concept of parenting is still alive, hence deviance among the children is minimal in Asia for several centuries. However, child develops deviance by influence of media, peer group and neighborhood. In this approach, the educator play a pivotal role in crime prevention. Among the developmental intervention strategies used courses related to proper parenting on the parenting and other school-based measure. For example, School Chalo, Sarva Shikshana Abhiyan and etc. are examples in Indian conditions. Situational crime prevention strategy aims at designing the physical environment in order to make it less desirable and riskier to commit crime. Advocates of this model are more likely than a campaigner of other models to claim empirical effectiveness in preventing crime. It involves among the other identifying city location areas of hotspot, use of surveillance cameras or CCTV cameras, screens, physical surveillance, reducing cash in hand, a bank to curb robbery, the use of boom gates to reduce car theft, and the underground inroads to prevent vandalism and grafting. In lieu of situational crime prevention techniques, some criminologists have advocated social prevention instead of because of the view that crime as a social problem is deeply ingrained within the economic and cultural structure in society. 4. Hybrid or whole of government approach, an alternative focusing solely on just one crime prevention approach, a program that combined several strategies and developed a new approach called hybrid program or whole of government program as it is known in Australia. Though it is limited to a country, the results were very good. As an example of this customized approach towards crime prevention in the safety action project implemented in Surfers Paradise and Queensland during the middle of 1990s, as well as other successful program implanted includes Project Against Crime and Violence, Domestic Violence, for example NCAVC, Say No to Drug, School Chalo, Sarva Shikshana Abhiyan, etc. There are changing trends in crime prevention. Crime is dynamic, hence there is always need to change the approach to deal with it. The evidentiary changes in crime pattern and new forms invite the criminologists across the world to work on changing trends in crime prevention. Ultimate aim of the model of the crime prevention is to reduce the risk of crime happening, providing the citizen environment space. Keeping these in view, 12 principles in crime prevention is identified by the lesson writer. These principles are widely accepted and wisely used across the world in crime prevention strategy or program. The change in trends in crime prevention will require change in application and model implementation by the end user. This change will be directed towards changes in indicator, parameters, programs and principles of crime prevention. While there are 12 principles that are common for all 4 crime prevention approaches, some model may not use one or more principles during the implementation of the crime prevention. These 12 principles has been outcome of the inspirational practices developed from punitive, corrective and protective approaches of crime prevention and remain the changing trend in application of crime prevention model. One or combination of crime principle can be called a changing trend of crime prevention. The 12 principles of changing trend in crime prevention, it is high time to note that crime prevention has become collective exercise. In some cases, individual or group can also apply their knowledge in implementation with or without government agency. Whether you are thinking about securing your office, home, car, motorcycle, boat, corporate, company, workplace, both private and public or personal property, use this 12 principle listed given below as going to be discussed and use it as a checklist. These changing trends may be used in single or combination factor. The best way to approach this is to look at your home or business as if you are a criminal. Identify the weak spots, potential breaking points or vulnerable areas and then prioritize the area that need to be improved. Number 1, first principle is target hardening, making target more resistant to attack or more difficult to remove or damage. A target is anything that a criminal would want to steal or damage during his criminal activity. It could be an object, document, currency, property and person or in some cases even valuable animals. For example, the target hardening is fixing alarm, fencing system, windows or door locks, fitting better doors, windows or shutters, blinders, screens in banks, government buildings, etc. Repairing and damaging directly property to attract these criminals, fitting a wheel lock to vehicle, chain to a bicycle, motorcycle, etc. Target removal. This is the second point, second principle, permanent or temporary removal of the vulnerable property or person. This simply means making sure that object which a potential criminal might be interested is in not visible condition. For example, rehousing vulnerable people, keeping car keys out of sight, inside a pocket or drawer, removing radio sat navigation devices from your parked cars outside your premise, moving small vulnerable items nearer to cash tilt in shops, removing jewelries, valuables from shop windows at night and place it in a secure location. Third point is eliminating the means to commit crime, making sure that material competent of being used to help a criminal commit a crime is not accessible from outside. Despite the fact that principle is 1 and 2 aims to reduce the risk directly associated with target, eliminating the means to commit crime looks at the problem from a different perspective. Things that could be removed or changed to reduce the chances of crime happening. For instance, a ladder provided easy access to the open window, hence eliminate such item after cleaning or removing it from the space after its use. So consider how many times you have seen a ladder or axe cutter or large wheelies bins in proximate areas of your premise, which can be usually be used for committing a crime. To reduce this threat, they could be chained or locked up so that they cannot be moved. For example, locking up tools and similar equipment with a chain or separate place. Securing building materials such as scaffolding, saw blade and etc. Using plastic drinking glass in venues where there is a history or possibility of a violence. Number 4 is neighborhood watch. This concept can be practiced in group or individual, in public or private space. Spending a night to watch the neighborhood or surrounding on rotation basis. This exercise would bring attention of general checkover. For example, this general checkover would check the lightnings in the night, check unusual happenings monitor the movement of the people and vehicles. Point 5, controlling and monitoring the access control. Restricting access to specific zones, buildings or parts of sites. There are many forms of access control. While some can be quite complex, others are relatively simple and user friendly. For example, identity card access, entry phones, baggage screening using a scanner, electronic door locks with access control, entry card system exclusively used for entry and exit. Number 6, reducing the gain for the criminal activity. In a criminal act, a criminal expects a huge return for his risk behavior. Let us keep in mind that even though adequate insurance will not reduce the gain to the criminal, it will reduce the loss to the individual or organization and avoid unnecessary stress, anxiety and tensions. For example, using a replica in a shop display, using a safe to reduce the amount of cash held in tilt, property marking to make it item identifiable and therefore less valuable to a criminal. Point number 7, principle number 7, surveillance, making sure criminal would be visible if they carry out a crime. In common with the other principles, there are various methods and techniques that can be applied. Unlike any of other principles, there are 3 types of surveillance: natural, formal and informal. Natural surveillance involves modifying the existing natural surrounding to increase visibility of the space. It can include increasing the height of fence, cutting tree closer to fence, pruning or removing shrubberies, improving on installing lighting, placing a playground area so that it overlooks nearby home and is overlooked by those homes. Formal surveillance is the most common used mode of surveillance. It uses technology, specialist staff employed or tasked to deter and identify actual or potential offender. Formal surveillance method includes placing security guards, alarm system, deploying security staff or seeking police support. Caretakers tasked with the security role, CCTV systems. Generally, formal surveillance system operates on a small scale. For example, those within individual shops and premises. On the other hand, includes CCTV system located in the road or space to be protected or potential area. Informal surveillance, which is a classic method, this involves residents, employees and common community being encouraged to be vigilant. The success remains with loyalty and fit staff placed in spot. For example, reception counter staff and office staff can be trained to spot potential problem makers or situations. A suitable procedure must be put in place to advise individual or staff what do if they do see anything suspicious during their early employment training and on a refresher meet. Principle number 8, meeting of tenants in neighborhood. Arranging meeting of tenant on a regular interval. Exercising this practice can bring in positive result only if continued on regular intervals. This could be certainly bring exchange of information, for example, information on nearby crimes, latest development near your living space, arrival of the new guest to the living space, living neighborhood, information on new vehicles bought by the tenants, meeting of the teens and exchanges of information on their behavior. Principle number 9, regulations and rule setting for different spaces. The introduction of codes of conduct which set out what is acceptable behavior. This exercise most depends on the government interest to attend the issue of crime prevention. For instance, the following are some examples of regulations and rule setting. This will include law enacted by Parliament, internal rules within the business, request to report to a reception, wearing of ID card, badges, visitor pass, the limiting of alcohol consumption in public place, signs prohibiting access to public buildings or certain areas in buildings. Principle number 10, raising the chance of being caught. This is called prevention method. Anything that slows down a criminal to do, increase their risk of being caught. Preventive methods are more effective if criminals' risk may be caught. Anything that slows down a criminal or increase the chance of detection is an effective method of prevention. The longer it takes to commit an offense, the more vulnerable a criminal will feel. Increasing the chance of a criminal being caught can be achieved. For example, proper management of CCTV system, publicizing success in detecting criminal, lighting that makes intruder criminal more visible, making sure security equipment operate properly, alerting offender to the fact that the CCTV system and alarms are being used. Principle number 11, deflecting criminal. This is a social prevention method, diverting the criminal and potential criminals from committing crime. This involves agencies with young people and offenders to influence standard thinking and attitude. Aim is to prevent potential criminal turning to crime. For example, education programs and school programs, youth groups and organizations providing training and work experience. Employing any of the following above methods would reduce the chance of crime happening. However, this method can be successfully only if police academic department in colleges and university, public educators, NGOs working on the crime prevention, working in partnership with government agencies, youth volunteers, tenant association, schools and sporting associations come together. Principle number 12 is SEPTED, crime prevention through environment designing. Changing of environment of a building, site, an estate or a town to reduce opportunity for committing crime. The emphasis is on putting a range of preventive measures in place at planning stage of a development, irrespective of whether this is of a commercial or residential nature. SEPTED can be used in existing environment as well as in new developments. It can include a whole range of features such as visibility surveillance, street and pathway layouts, appropriate lighting in buildings and roads and streets, incorporating crime prevention into a new housing development at planning stage could be ensure that all doors and windows have good quality locks. Planting is kept to a minimum to increase surveillance. Estate has an open design which also increases surveillance. This is a good street or perimeter lighting as well. Adequate lighting at entrance to the building, common areas, landings, parking space are covered by either or both CCTV or residential, deterring possible offence by providing natural surveillance of vehicle. Summary of this lesson is, since crime are dynamic, new forms and patterns invite the researchers and agencies to keep intact of crime prevention and changing trends in crime prevention approaches. Though the crime prevention strategies are changing, the reduction of crime is yet another daydream. Some models of crime prevention that are successful in implementation area does not apply to another environment in which whole or part. However, some changing trends in crime prevention are result oriented and some waits for another model. In this module, it is worth noting that changing trends in crime prevention give the readers some idea on how the models are developed and continue to exist. 12 principles discussed above will definitely yield a better result in crime prevention. Thank you.